Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, people of all ages, welcome back to the Sticky Floors podcast. I am one of your hosts, CJ. I am joined by Mr. Will. Tonight, me and Mr. Will are getting back into the world of espionage and bullets and violence and secret
Bullets.
agent work. Right. All the stuff. All the stuff that I like. Last week we did Brown Sugar. That was a Will pick. Will wanted to explore the depths of the heart and just, what drives romance. But today we're back to the chaos and disorder and dysfunction
Chaos.
as we deal with Skyfall, a James Bond film starring Daniel Craig. Mr. Will, what's up with you, man? How you doing today?
Chilling, man. What's going on with you?
No, I'm good. Yo, I'm good. Listen, I'm really about this, man. I'm really excited about doing this movie because, like, I like James Bond movies. I know, like, people say, like, they're like adult man soft porn kind of joints, man, and they've been described as that. I didn't just make that up, right? But I like these joints, and I really like the Daniel movies, and I like Scott out of all those, so I'm looking forward to this one, man. Yo, if this is your first time with the Sticky Floors podcast, thank you for jumping in with us. And we want you to like, subscribe, and share. We're on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify Podcasts. We're on Threads. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. There are so many ways to keep in touch with us, to talk to us about movies like Skyfall or other movies that you may be interested in. And tonight I'm about to kick it over to my man, Mr. Will, who's going to hit us with the summary of Skyfall so we can jump into this film.
I really just want to say that introduction is uncanny, boy. Lighthearted yet with a serious tone underneath, yo.
Like, that's exactly what I was shooting for. Edutainment. That's exactly what I KRS-One, man.
Oh, man. So Skyfall follows James Bond, seen on a mission in Istanbul where he pursues a mercenary who has stolen a hard drive containing the identities of undercover NATO agents. During a high-speed chase across rooftops and on a moving train a la via motorcycle, Bond's accidentally shot by fellow agent Eve Moneypenny under the orders of M, causing him to fall into a river and be presumed dead. Following his disappearance, MI6 suffers a major cyber attack that exposes the identities of undercover agents and threatens the entire intelligence network, forcing M to defend her leadership as pressure mounts from government officials. Meanwhile, Bond's revealed to have survived and is living in isolation on a remote island near India, seemingly detached from his former life and responsibilities. However, Bond returns to duty after a period of recovery, but the mission quickly escalates when he traces the attacks on MI6 to Tiago Rodriguez, aka Raul Silva, a former agent with a personal vendetta against M. As the mission intensifies, Bond's physicality is pushed to his limits during pursuits and confrontations across locations such as Shanghai and London. Silva's plan to dismantle MI6 forces Bond into a defensive position where trust within the intelligence organization and community begins to erode. The climax builds towards Bond taking M into protective custody as Silva's pursuit becomes more direct and personal, leading them to retreat to Bond's ancestral home, Skyfall, for a final stand, resulting in M being mortally wounded, reinforcing the themes of betrayal, sacrifice, and loyalty that define the mission.
There it is. So this movie stars Daniel Craig, Javier Bardem, Ralph Fiennes, Naomi Harris, and Judi Dench. It was released in 2012. This is the 23rd James Bond film and third starring Daniel Craig, who also did Casino Royale and Quantum before that, which were two that I really liked as well. This one is directed by Sam Mendes, who also directed Spectre in 2015. The budget was between $150 and $200 million, and it made over $1 billion at the box office.
Crazy.
It was the second highest grossing film of 2012. Also won 2 Academy Awards, including Best Sound Editing and Best Original Song, which was Adele's song singing Skyfall, which I actually downloaded and I was listening to that this morning because that's how much I like this movie. It's also currently available on Netflix, but it is about to leave on April 20th. So we are doing this show on April 19th. So after this, you got like 4 hours to watch this joint before you go to pay for it.
You know how those joints pop up elsewhere, though, simultaneously. I noticed like that with HBO when they have like all of the DC comic stuff and see some of it on Netflix and then, some other platform.
Amazon owns the rights to the James Bond films. Back to Amazon, but sometimes to watch them though, you need to. Yeah, I mean, you gotta pay for it on Netflix too. But if you got Netflix,
but then there's like the in-buy stuff or whatever. Like you're say for example, like with Amazon Prime, you gotta also get High Dive or Crunchyroll in order to watch certain stuff. And it's the point of having cable, you know, the cord, and all of a sudden now you got to buy all these additional platforms and stuff.
Right, you cut one cord, they make more cords. But look, man, let's get into this joint, man. So look, I gotta. This is not my hot take, right? But I'm gonna say there are two movies that I think really influenced this next set of James Bond films, the Daniel Craig ones. The first is the Jason Bourne films. Second is Triple X. And the reason why I bring those two up is because I think that the fighting scenes and the action scenes in the Jason Bourne films really is a lot of what the Bond films pull from, especially in Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, and a little bit in this one as well. But I thought like the Triple X films, remember how in the beginning of Triple X films, they showed like the secret agent with like the suit and tie couldn't infiltrate the organization where everybody was like, you know, scheme
athletes and stuff. You know?
Exactly. And that's why they had to go out and get Vin Diesel. And I think like those two films were kind of like the referendum on this kind of spy movie and this kind of spy movie guys. And so when they came out with Casino Royale, they really did a lot to rebrand Bond, and they used Daniel Craig as a way to do that. Now, we talked a couple episodes ago when we did the Thomas Crown Affair about how, for me, Pierce Brosnan will always be James Bond. But I think that Daniel Craig's Bond is like, for these movies, these are some of the best Bond movies and films that I think, in terms of like at least the first three, but the whole set of five are just amazingly well done movies.
You know, that's an interesting take, man, because the thing with Triple X is it's campy in certain things, man, like very exaggerated. And that's one of the things I don't like about James Bond. So like from
part of it too,
to all, even some of Pierce Brosnan stuff, like I didn't like that hokey, like, you know, unplausible type stuff. You know what I mean?
So, it's in Skyfall too.
Maybe not to the same. I think they parody it, and I think they make fun of it when he's like, when he's sitting down with Q in the art museum, and he's like, yeah, you know, I can do more from my bed before I can have my first. And he's like, oh, so here's the gun, but the gun is imprinted to his and then he's got the little tiny radio, which also harkens back to earlier James Bond. So I get that, but at the same token, I'm like, in this day and age where, you know, people want more grounded, because, you know, you're talking about the influx of movies like the Blair Witch joint, which wasn't real, but it was phrased as being real. So and then, you know, reality TV, but ends up being scripted. But in the beginning, you didn't know things were scripted. You really thought that people were authentic self on TV and actually going down like that. So they want that element, yet they want to be surprised. They want the thrills and the chase scenes, all the stuff that is reminiscent of the James Bond character itself. So I get that, but I would always liken Jason Bourne as the American version of James Bond. So when they had Mr. Wright on as his American brother in the James Bond films, to me it always didn't seem right, because I'm like, this dude is out of shape at this point. He's kind of like he's not
of, you know, Craig. And Daniel Craig's Bond was like the first one that was like sort of like a physical, you know what I mean? Like even from Casino Royale, they made a big deal about showing him with his shirt off. You know, the rest of the Bonds, they didn't care what they looked like.
Pierce Brosnan's character was more like, I don't want to say slender, but he was more like you know, made it a point that these guys had to be 6 feet and above.
Good, and they had to be good looking. Be all those things, right? But like this version of Bond is more like kind of like a brawler. They got the Omega watches, but he's also like, you believe in a fist fight, he could win it. A lot to make sure that you could have. Even in this film, they have to have the scene with him swimming, you know what I mean, by the pool, you know, to show.
Show off his back muscles. I mean, props to him, because that's dedication. So, you know, shout out to Daniel Craig. That's hours upon hours in the gym. That's not, so I don't want to sound like a hater, you know what I'm saying? But, so it segues to the fact that the thing that makes you think of James Bond is his mind more so than the physical element, like how he's able to talk his way out of certain things, yet he has the dexterity to sit there and crack jokes with you, whatever have you. He may sip on a martini or have a scotch or, whatever have you, but, he can still be a man's man, if you will. He's just not, as you put it, he didn't have that physicality, that brawler physique.
Yeah.
In all cases, actually, of the depiction.
To the other ones, whether that's Brosnan's or Timothy Dalton's, certainly Sean Connery's, they were more smooth. Like this one is not. Yeah, he gets it with the ladies and everything, but he's not like that real smooth, debonair kind of way that the other ones were before him. And it's almost like the movies are never really clear about whether they're remakes or like maybe prototypical stories. In fact, this one might actually be the only one that seems to me like the pre Sean Connery James Bond, because at the end it fits more to be in that way. But he's not as smooth as the rest of those dudes, and he's even described as being more of a blunt object, and being like not as suave of an agent, even compared to Silva in this film.
Like, what is the timeline or the chronological order? Like, I get it. The source material are books from Ian Fleming and his real life, and so it's almost autobiographical with creative licensing. However, I'm still like, well, look, you got the older man version of him, the young, naive, just getting his feet wet, type of version. Where are these things all? But at the same time, you believe like, yo, they need a different actor only because humans don't live forever. There is no immortality. So you got to have a different actor, which credits to James Bond, because unlike Black Panther, these guys say, yo, just because such and such is older or whatever, we're not going to have. And rest in power to Sean Connery. Just because Sean Connery's gone, that doesn't mean we stop making James Bond flicks. You know what I mean? Like the legacy is still endures, even to the point where, you have, what was the joint? Where you had the 007 as a female. I can't think of the actresses.
That's when it was in Die Another Day?
Yeah.
No, not Die Another Day. No Time. Die Another Day was actually the last Pierce Brosnan.
The people go to see James Bond. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not going to see M or Q. You know what I mean? They're going to see James Bond. So therefore, as long as the supporting characters stay within their limits, you'll take it. You want James Bond as action, suave, the martini, the watches, the PK joint. You want him to basically date only married women. The married women always got to die.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
So, as long as you stay true to that, anything pretty much goes. You can suspend reality if you want, if you will, rather.
Yeah, and this one is a little bit more flawed in that sense. Like, even in the one in Casino Royale, when he's talking with Vesper and she's like, basically making it seem like, are you going to be trying to talk to me? And he's like, no, you're not my type. You're single. And I don't like single women. Exactly. But there was like, it was this version of Bond is really not like, he's got his flaws. Every movie. And what's interesting about these ones is these movies do tell one continuous story, which was different from the other James Bond films where it was like same Bond, same M, same Q, but the villains were always different. And it wasn't like one story was feeding into the next one. These ones, they're building towards a story. And because of that, you see like James Bond take the physical, psychological, emotional beating of each film, whether it's losing Vespa, not really being to avenge her. Now this one, he loses M. The next one, he kind of gets married, which was a weird turn. And then after that, he ultimately gets killed. You know what I mean? Wait, now that's very important to my hot take. So, we'll hold on that one. But I mean, like, there's just that idea of the continuous storytelling. It works. And to your point, it's interesting. Like, we care about, like Spider-Man is always Spider-Man, and it doesn't matter like what character is wearing the suit. Same for James Bond. Like, James Bond is the character, and we don't care. We do care about who gets to be James Bond, but the main character is always the idea of James Bond
because of the history. This is something that I liken it to Cool J theory, which is, or even my Wu-Tang theory, which is essentially all generations can go, all different ethnicities, all different races go to these events because they can trace in this particular character's life a point where it hit home. So Sean Connery was, say, perhaps my grandmother and grandfather's James Bond. we won't talk about the other guy that you restricted me from talking about. And then you go to
way to mention it anyway.
Roger Moore. Then in turn, he's like my parents, even B, like on the cusp. Then you got Timothy Dalton, where I was like, who is Timothy Dalton? As a kid, I'm like, I remember watching like E.T. Entertainment Tonight, for those that don't know what that is, and they kept talking about the illusion of Pierce Brosnan being the next James Bond, and all of a sudden Timothy Dalton pops up, and I'm like, what? Wait, what? What's going on here? Pierce Brosnan, come to find out, it's due to money, and all right, now we finally got James Bond. And then, I kid you not, when Daniel Craig popped up, I was like, what's a Daniel Craig?
Really did not think he was going to be good for the role. You know, people didn't think he was attractive enough. They didn't think he had the pedigree. And, you know, he was coming from Pierce Brosnan, you know, who we talked about, you know.
And all the guys had black hair. He has like blonde, brown. Yeah. Which really messed me up, because I'm like, yo, how old is this dude? You know what I'm saying? Like,
and that's a main sentiment of the film, man. And that's a good way for us to get into the cake, man, because there's a lot of things about this joint that we like. So, Mr. Will, what's the cake for you on Skyfall?
Yeah, man. So I like the very strong story and the storytelling. The dialogue goes along with that for me as well. Definitely like the insight into James Bond that was offered. I think this is the best. I did Scott. I'm going to admit it. I'm not reading all of Ian Fleming's books about James Bond. I'm not doing that. But this gave me a lot of insight as far as his background. Like, I was like, oh, back to the movie with no spoilers. So I went in not knowing that, oh, he's Scottish. You know what I mean? Like, I always thought James Bond was British.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, I was very naive and ignorant on that part. But I'm glad I was cured of my nescience once I discovered that. And then I come to like Daniel Craig, you know what I mean? And once again, we got your dude, Javier Bardem, as another classic villain. He's at his best. I just don't like the whole like Eminem dyed blonde hair joint, man. Yeah.
He's a weird dude. Like, Javier Bardem was having fun with that role.
Yeah, he was.
You can tell he's having a good time.
Some of them scenes in there made me cringe a little bit. Like when he pulled out his teeth, yo.
Nice.
Like, I know it's fake, but at the same time, I was like, yo, oh man, I ain't messing with no cyanide capsules, yo. Then the cinematography, I love that they were going back and forth. Like when I think of Shanghai, that joint made me think of Madripoor. Shout out to Marvel, where in the joint dragging my AI, because you can see the sped up kimono dragon all of a sudden. I was like, yo, they feasting on homie, and his screams of death. Yo, they're like, all right, yo, like they ain't tripping. Like, all right, yo. I'm like, yo, damn. I guess that's it. Oh, I love though the blending of the modern and, you know, there's some nostalgia. So like like we mentioned with respect to the gun and the little radio and everything like that, and it was sweet. You know? And it's funny that they draw like the little they harken back to some of the movies where he's like, yo, I can eject you out of this seat.
Yes.
Which I enjoy. And then, you know, oh, this is very inconspicuous, you know. So like I love that aspect. And then that just goes into plenty of style, plenty of action. Basically the nonstop heart pounding moments that lead up these different chase scenes and everything like that. And then, you know, I like the fact that the villain is a former MI6 agent, like that detailed, where he was someone raised in the same vein, coming up through the system, and then he's dismayed by what he believed to be as being kind of like, you know, you sold me out, but he was overreaching. That's the part that I think is left out a lot. Like he was doing stuff to the Chinese, and you have to weigh, you know, and then micro and macro. There was, like M said, like I was able to get 5 agents. He wasn't doing what we told him to do, which could have led to other serious concerns. Like it would have been a full out World War III, perhaps, just because this one dude was doing these things that were out of pocket. And then last but not least, I just love the symmetry with Ralph Fiennes' character. Like he not only is his name, at least in the film, Gareth Mallory. So like I didn't see the whole M and then M being killed and then he becomes M. But then he plays Orlando Oxford in The Kingsman. And you could look at that like the OSS, that's the you know what I mean? Office of Strategic Services in real life, which became the FBI in World War II. And then all of a sudden he becomes the leader. So like it's almost like he's his grandson, if you will, in these things.
And also like those movies, like a prototypical shout out to like the James Bond movies, but ramped up a lot in terms of their violence and everything.
Yeah, so I'm definitely feeling that, man. What you got?
A lot of same things. I think one of the things I really like about this film was the opening scene. Like you talked about it in your summary, but just the opening chase scene. The one thing about James Bond films, they jump right into the action.
Yeah.
There's no exposition. The first 10 minutes of a James Bond movie is going to be an incredible action scene followed by somebody singing whatever the song is going to be. You're going to get
those songs stand out too. Some of them, man. The Madonna joint, this Adele joint, man. Even the Duran Duran sealed A View to a Kill, like those. The Duran Duran, man.
Yep. Dance into the Fire.
Yeah.
Yep,
okay.
Yo, when I was young and that joint came out, until we dance into the fire.
This is MTV joint, bro.
That was the joint. Yeah,
man.
That was the joint, man. Yeah, man. So I really like that. You mentioned everything that happens in Shanghai, Macau. That was just a great scene, great set piece. I love that as well. But the thing with the Silva is a composite of a couple different things. Because you remember back in GoldenEye, the other James Bond, the other MI6 that was kind of like, I think it was 006 or something.
Yeah, it was like, 006.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. And then in the beginning of the last Pierce Brosnan movie, he was actually held by the Chinese.
Yeah,
that's why he had the beard and everything.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, like how they combined so many different parts into like who Silva was, and Silva also is like this technical kind of genius in a way that Bond is not. And he makes so many quips about Bond, like your knees must hurt. All you have is
the thing that really bothered me is like everyone trying to say that he was a better agent than him.
Yes,
he wasn't. If he would, because of the very thing you brought up. Bond was kidnapped. He didn't break. He didn't ask anybody to come save him. He just rode off into his duty, and his honor wouldn't allow him to stay retired. He goes back to work.
Both Bond and Silva are running a very parallel route, and where they diverge is what makes James Bond and what makes Silva the Bond villain, right? And then the last thing I would say is I really like how the movie ending scene with them going to Skyfall and all the people coming after them, and it's not like all this. It's like just two guys like fighting outside in the end. You know what I mean? Like Bond kills Silva with a knife. Like not by throwing him off a rocket ship or anything. Like some of these movies have like these crazy and fantastic endings.
They had the Steve Jobs character before he was Steve Jobs. What's the old dude who had the glasses and he was a multimedia mogul. He wanted to take over the world. I forget. And they're throwing dudes off of I think it was a blimp. They threw the dude off of.
The blimp was View to a Kill.
Yeah,
that was View to a Kill. But I mean, like I'm just saying, like some of these endings of these movies are like these big fantastical kind of things, and this one was just like. Bond, he does the thing on the ice lake with the guys, but even that stuck the landing, and they had some stakes on it because, as you mentioned before, at the end, woman M dies, so man M can step in. So I mean, you got that too, which I know. This is a perfect segue into your hate, man. So good, let me hear it because I know you.
My joint, y'all. With that, no, I only have two, and we're gonna start where CJ left off. Shout out to Judi Dench, man. Like she is an actress, man. Illustrious career, and a lot of praise. I like her as an actress, especially as M. And she got that Betty White treatment. Rest in power to Betty White. During this period, like you would see her in a lot of different movies, commercials, being showcased, et cetera. And I thought that was really dope and well overdue. I'd like to see I'd like to see a lot more actresses get that same credit. Like for example, Viola Davis, like an Angela Bassett. You know what I mean? Like I'd like to see them. Man, we just did one. I'd like to see, even though we critique them in a certain way, I would like to see Sanaa Lathan get that treatment. I would like to see Taraji B. Henson get that treatment. I'd like to see, I'd like to see Nia Long get that treatment, man. Like, you know what I mean? Where they do the rounds, if you will, and they're on different types of different shows. Like, and that's why I say that because I recently saw the commercial for Michael. Which and I don't know how I feel about that, man, where they start to make these actresses who are like, in their late 40s all of a sudden look 60, 70 years old, like they can't be the desirable woman anymore. But I digress. I just didn't like the fact that they killed off M. But they did it in a very ceremonious way in which they did her character justice, because she was on the front line. She got shot. She took a bullet and was like able to like do her thing still. Like she didn't act, she didn't sit there and ask for help or, oh, what was me? She didn't do any of that. Like she thugged it out. I really like that about, and she had a gun and she was able to like even like make fun of herself. Like I was never a good shot. You know what I mean? Like I really like that about her. The other thing that I didn't like, man, and I know I'm just picking here. I mentioned the hair thing on Javier. Like, I really ain't feeling that. Like, yo, dude, what is you doing, son? But I just thought that there were too many coincidences for, like, he plans all this at 2 years in advance, right? But he doesn't know about like any subtle change. How would he know about any of the subtle changes that they were going to make or not make? You know what I mean? Like in real time, people make decisions that you for, like throwing monkey wrenches. So, you know, if he gets out of the jail, you know, because of he knows about the computer programming, but how did he know that Q was going to be the one who was? Then how did he know that at that particular time, through the railway system, was going to be able to set up, get into the parliament or to the things that were like, oh, coincidental, like it just fit so seamlessly. I don't know.
The interesting thing about this particular film, so Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace is definitely the sequel to that, right?
Yeah.
And then Skyfall is connected to Quantum of Solace, but it's not really carrying the same storyline anymore, because in the end of that one, he essentially catches up. In the end of Quantum of Solace, Bond catches up with the guy that tricked Vespa into.
I always look at that as the Desert James.
Yeah, no, I got you. But here's the thing though. But so then Skyfall happens, and then remember in Spectre, then you find out that Spectre is this big organization
with tentacles
that
everywhere.
Connects all the people together that including Inspector. Then you find out that the reason why Silva knows all the stuff he does, organization Spectre, and Spectre is ran by the guy who was the son of James Bond's father, who doesn't like, you know, it's just so many different
vendetta organization.
Yeah, but is what you said true? Absolutely. It is a lot of convenience. And the train scene is nuts. So I'll give you that.
Radio thing where, hey, we got this little thing called a flip with, and I remember having that cell phone too, that AT&T long navy blue joint. And he's like, guess what? I got something for you. It's called a radio. He presses the button, the train comes through. And I'm like, so it didn't cave in on both of them and everything. He manages.
Yeah.
So
that's the campiness right there. All right, so here's my quick ones. One, I don't think that Bond is going to survive that shot to the chest in the beginning of the movie. Well, so you got first he gets shot by those armor-piercing bullets, right?
No, it went through, but here's the thing. It went through metal, through a window. That slows the trajectory, and then it hits him on the right-hand side, but not over the heart, more like the muscle.
Yeah.
Still bleeding?
Yeah. And he takes a shot in the chest from Moneypenny, who's shooting with a high-powered rifle.
No, I thought the joint hit him in the side and the ribs underneath, not directly in the chest, but on like on the like, yo. So that's why I was like, all right, you know what? The plausibility. Here's a guy, and the same way that they talk about, there was this thing, this life science thing or whatever, where I got shot, except he happened to be obese, and then because it went through the multi layers of his fat, it slowed the bullet down before it hit any organs. And so I've always looked at it like, yo, all those dudes who get shot that are more muscular, it's just the same thing. And then he falls into the river. It cools, it slows down his heart. Because no, I'm serious too.
All right, man. All right, I got you. James Bond survived.
Just saying the science behind it. Because look, man, they have a show where it talks about the science behind movies. And I'm just telling you, dude.
No, go ahead. So his muscle stopped the bullet. So the bullet broke all his ribs. He fell from the top of a train. He landed in the river or whatever, floated underwater. Bleeding from 2 different wounds.
It was cold.
Got out, took care of himself, broken ribs, got somewhere in India, was drinking tequila with scorpions on his hand. Everything was...
Yo, dude, I've read stuff where got off and parachuted, bounced, and still lived, man. I'm just saying, you don't have to die. Right. And with that being said about dying and escaping peril, which you... Man,
I didn't like the Bond tried to do all these one-liners in the film. All right, wait. The one where he's talking to Severine And she's like, what do you know about fear? And he's like, all there is. Like, dog, you're not Daredevil. Like, come on, man. Like, what?
He's James Bond, man.
I get it, but it just didn't seem. Look, okay. And what about when he's talking to Silva? And Silva's like, he's like, everybody needs a hobby. And Silva kind of looks at him like, dog, what you about to say? He finally asks him, okay, what's yours? And he's like, resurrection. And so
he comes back. Think about every
fact. All right, James Bond.
I think Sean Connery's dead, and then he ends up coming in power. Yakamoto. Oh man, what's the brother's name? Yakut. He was in Aliens. He was an Alien rather. And he played the villain or whatever when he was in like Africa or something like that. And James Bond had a different face for a hot minute. This is the dude who escapes peril, who escapes death, man.
But like, I didn't actually like the line.
My friend.
Okay. Yeah. So I got that. The next thing is the Bond Severin sex scene is kind of weird the way that it happens. In the bar, she gets on the boat. She's in the shower. He just walks into the shower.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, that's kind of rapey.
That's kind.
Even when I watched it in the theater, I was like, I don't think this is right. Yeah, that one was a little weird. I didn't like that. And then it was also weird to me that Bond didn't know Moneypenny's name. Like that just seemed to the end of the movie. Like he would have.
You know what I mean?
Like, but he had to know it. Like she introduced like this. By now she done shot him, been in the car with him, shaved his beard up. Now like 3 months later, she says, "Hey, my name's Moneypenny."
Well, to his credit, they were never properly introduced. She never mentions her name,
dog. She was in his house. She was in his room. I didn't mean to say that James Bond messes with me.
I said, I don't work for MI6. Life as James Bond is like, yo, I don't worry about those details. Remember,
got this going. All right, so that's my thing. That's my 4 things that I didn't like. That's my hate, man. On to the questions.
Oh, what you read? All right, cool. Here we go. What is Skyfall as a location significant beyond Bond's childhood home, and what does it symbolize in the context of identity and origin?
You know what, man? So you said something earlier about this, and I think it's a good point. Like, it was the first time you really got an idea of what he was about. Like you said, you find out that he was Scottish. You kind of think that he's an orphan, but, you know, M kind of says that, and you realize that M knows everything about him, even from the time when he was a child. You see kind of where he's from. Now, I did think it was interesting that the old guy, Kincaid, says that his name is James Bond, that his name was always James Bond, which
was his real name.
Well, Spectre kind of challenges that a little bit, because in Spectre, they say that he was adopted by that family. And if he was adopted by them, exactly, it would have made it seem like it was something a little bit different. But, you know, in addition to it just being a cool name, like the idea of like Skyfall being this, he's got to go back to the beginning to deal with this current threat. It was just a good story.
Yeah, here's a question that just dawned on me. Skyfall is out in the middle of the boonies, though. Like,
yeah,
why would they pick that particular area if his family is so influential, so like embedded in the prestige and you know, all these things that are associated with the government of the British? Like, one, there's no other modern conveniences, if you will. So that would make them a target, because now it's predictable for them to leave this estate to come in. There's only one road in, one road out, when it's showing the windy road. And, you know, it's a perfect way to set up like, oh, it was a dark night. There's no lights. They lost control of the weather. You know what I mean? Like, it's always these things that would allow that. Like, why would they pick there? And knowing that he said that he always hated that place. Like, I'm sure his parents would have known, like, my child is not comfortable here. There's no other children here. He's the only child. Like,
well, remember that Inspector, they say that Blofeld grew up with him and was responsible for killing the parents. So I mean, like that, and that's the thing about this one. This one is kind of the beginning of a movies, and it's not till the next one that they start to fill in of like what Skyfall is, what's his relationship with Blofeld and things. I like these. I like James Bond.
All right,
soft porn for men. James Bond movie.
Okay. In what ways does Silva's manipulation of information reflect modern fears about cybersecurity and surveillance?
You know, like we like, it's 2026. We are so concerned about artificial intelligence, right? And everybody goes back to, you know, the Terminator movies, the Matrix movies, the Creator, all these movies about artificial intelligence. I think that these James Bond movies also tell you about what villainy looks like in the future. Like this guy Silva,
Right.
he's conducting terrorism by destroying currency in a Nigerian country, you know, like, or in the country of Nigeria, like doing stuff like that. Like the guy before this in a Quantum of Solace, Eric Green, remember he was pretending to be this guy who cared about water and everything, but really he was destabilizing the water wars. Like these movies are also kind of telling you like the future of what villainy looks like too as well. And Silva is a part of that. You know, like Silva is also the modern day villain who doesn't have to, he says to Bond, I just run my own missions. I want to do, I own this island because I convinced everybody here that there was this lethal virus that was going to kill everybody. We've never heard that before, right? Like, they're just like the way that movie worked. Silva and all these James Bond villains are now like the people we're dealing with now in real life.
You know what? You are really on to something. You cooking with fish grease here, because when he said influencing Ugandan political elections and stuff like that, that really got me thinking like, yo, how many countries go in, disrupt, you know what I mean, a stable, autonomous country, you know, doing their, you know, all of a sudden is dealing with some type of upheaval from an outside source.
Sure.
You know?
Going to a certain place and then you can control it. And then, you know,
just killing people, doing
right. It's almost like a Bond villain.
Talking about, hey, what do we do? My last question for you is, does the ending suggest restoration of the old order at MI6 or a permanent shift in what James Bond represents?
So you asked this question earlier, and it's like trying to figure out, are these movies a continuation of the Pierce Brosnan film, or are they something different? And I think that at the end of this, when he gets back to there being a money penny now and there being a male M, that it's actually, this is the story of the Sean Connery version of James Bond. And so I think it's actually the return to the beginning of who James Bond was. So in a sense, the narrative, while the narrative is modern, I think the story is the story of how James Bond became the person that we see in Sean Connery later on. It's going backwards like that. Now my hot take is going to challenge all that, but for right now we'll keep that.
The consistency throughout the show, I would like to the viewers, and even those who are first time viewers, we mix in some comedy. Yes, we have some seriousness. We try to have a continuous timeline throughout the entire show, which is, we're talking about, in this case, James Bond returning to his roots in the essence, where I would argue James Bond, Sean Connery's James Bond, is an amalgamation of Pierce Brosnan and of softness and the debonair, tall, 6 feet tall, black hair, etc., smooth and charming. And yet CJ has pointed out like these things throughout the timeline of the history where there may seem a disruption. The latter half of James Bond, there is a continuous thread, and then it circles back around to the origins. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? And then we try to replicate that within each episode here at Sticky Floors. So kudos for reeling us in.
Thank you. And I also just add one last thing. I think the way that these movies worked, Daniel Craig thought that this would be the last James Bond movie he was going to do.
Yeah.
More money at him. And he did Spectre, and he threw some more money at him, and then he did No Time to Die. So I think like he also saw it as this was the end. Now, like we said in the beginning, the joint did $1 billion in the box office. That's too much money on the line. But I think that this movie was originally the end of this, and then it would have just connected those movies, and then, you know, it would have gotten into something else.
Yes. He did. The next actor would have been in those two movies. So, oh man, man, see, you in your bag today, yo.
Yo, and that's a perfect segue to my question, yo, the $64 million question. Who should be the next James Bond?
Oh man, this was easy for me. Henry Cavill, dog. Because in World War II movies based upon espionage, where he's displayed being suave and debonair, and then he did Uncle.
Man from Uncle.
It's 70s too. Like, yo, I mean, this dude can't do everything. I like him as an actor, man, because of his versatility, whether it be sci-fi all the way up to, you know what I mean, like something modern. Like he, and now he's doing what's the joint with the immortality or whatever have you. There can joints, and I don't know if Voltron's ever coming out, but think about that,
Right.
man.
All right. Yes. I'm just gonna add my pick for this one, man. I'm gonna take Aaron Taylor Johnson, man. My next James Bond. And the reason is, different pick, different look, different style. But I liked what he did. The movie isn't great. He tried. The movie just, he's got the Kick-Ass movies were dope, actually.
Yeah,
Both of them. Those, what I mean? He showed like a little comedic range in the Fall Guy that he's done. And he's also like a blank slate in a way that he doesn't really have a defining role associated with. So similar to Daniel Craig, like you said, like, when Daniel Craig was first chosen, Daniel Craig was from, like he's kind of got that anonymity that allows you to kind of overlay the history of Bond onto him. Well, Cavill would be great too, but Cavill's also, like you said, he's got Superman.
Yeah.
He got the arm joint from Mission Impossible. Like, he's got these moments that everybody
from Netflix. He Geralt. So yeah.
He does. All right, here's my next question. All right, so Daniel Craig's got the 5 Bond movies, 1 to 5, man, or 5 to 1. What's your favorite of the Daniel Craig Bond films?
This was really easy for me too. Skyfall, Casino Royale, No Time to Die, Spectre, Quantum of Solace.
There it is. I got Skyfall, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, No Time to Die, and Spectre. I didn't like Spectre that much. I didn't much. It was because he got married in the end. I just didn't buy it. I just didn't believe that.
Okay. Yeah,
I just didn't believe him settling down like that. But
character seems to be like that.
Vespa would have been the perfect.
I mean, that's why I was like, yo, she's hard to kill. She's challenging him. She can do her own thing. She wasn't fawning over him. Like
Mr. White's daughter. Which also that didn't, Bond.
Double down on this whole, he's got to settle down and they gave him a kid on top of it. It's whack.
They tried to domesticate Bond, but Bond can't be domesticated. What you got on popcorn, man, on Skyfall?
4.5, yo, easily. And depending on what type of mood I'm in, I might even boost it up to 5, but I say 4.5 because it covered everything that we talked about. Suspense, action, drama, nostalgia. Major themes of loyalty and betrayal, trust, maternal issues. Even Silver joked about it. You know what I mean? He's like unresolved. Even when he's talking about the psychoanalyst of it, he's like unresolved trauma from his childhood, and it had some quirky moments that, like, if you wanted to nerd out, we talked about the campiness. I think it just covers everything that you would want in any genre of film. It just happens to be that this particular one is an action-based one with such a rich tapestry of history.
Yeah, I'm going 5 for everything that you said. I think it's a really great story that also is about the idea of change and loss. Can you deal with, losing things that are important to you, whether that's your youth in the case of Bond, when it's for M, is it her position or status? For Silver, his recognition, like his importance in the MI6. Can you let go of those things and move forward? And all the characters have to learn how to do that. So that's what I got on Skyfall, man. What you got on your hot take, Mr. Will?
Again, this harkens back to us being in this straight line where everything draws upon one another, getting to this point. The controversy that has come across with James Bond. Is James Bond 007? Is 007 James Bond? Who can be James Bond? This is a fictional character, whether it be Santa Claus or now James Bond and anything in between. Can black people be Santa Claus or James Bond or Batman? The one I use is Batman because I like comic books. So for Batman, Bruce Wayne, and Batman is Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne identifies himself as Batman, even in his mind when there's countless stories where they're talking about like, what's your name? Who do you see himself? And he's like, Batman. Bruce Wayne is the mask that I wear. Batman is who I really am. I haven't been a child since I was 12. I draw that comparison to say James Bond is a white male who's in his 30s who drinks, womanizes, and shoots people. You know what I mean? Like in between there, he's suave, debonair. He can, most luxury cars, he flashes that dope watch. It comes in all different colors and styles, but he likes his martini how? Shake it. And he can gamble. Like this is James Bond. And you associate that with a white dude. Now I'm a black guy saying this, all right? But at the same token, I like Jace as Batman with the mouth guard and everything like that. He's not Bruce Wayne Batman, but he's Batman. I like Dick Grayson as Batman for a time. You know what I mean? I like Battle for the Cowl and things like that. I think the same thing can be done with James Bond. I think that you can have a James Bond who is James Bond, and he can pass on the mantle or the torch of 007. We saw that in what's called what's the joint?
The last one, No Time to Die.
No Time to Die, where 007 was now a black female.
Woman, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that shattered everything. People were like, what? Wait, what? And even he quips in there like, yo, no, I'm 007. You can take on the number, any other number, 006 for all I care, even 008. But 007 is me. And I think that the discussion of all the James Bond movies, the sense of who are you, the sense of loss when your identity is in what you do, your profession. When your name is no longer your name, but now it's synonymous with some title, or you get a nickname or whatever have you that you don't like. I think the fact that James Bond continuously goes regardless of age, you know what I mean? So from the 60s to the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, there's certain staples about James Bond that carry throughout. Sure, we talked about it. You may have a Sean Connery, you may have a Roger Lansby, you may have, a Roger Moore, you may have a George Lansby, you may have Timothy Dalton and Daniel Craig, but there's certain things that you have to touch upon in order for people to buy in that it's James Bond. I don't care. You know what? Idris Elba is now 007, and his name is Jack Baker, but he ain't going to be James Bond. Like, it just doesn't fit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even care if it's Damas Isra. You know what I mean? Like, whatever you want to have someone take on that new mantle so that other people feel represented and they see themselves in the character. Cool. But James Bond, just like Bruce Wayne, fits a certain archetype, at least in my mind.
Okay. So what you're saying is, like, basically, if it's James Bond, it's going to have to be like a white male in his 30s who you said drinks, shoots people, and sleeps with women.
And he also drives luxury cars and flashes watches.
Yeah, that's watch right.
So materialistic, misogynistic,
I got you.
alcoholic, and a murderer.
I got you. A hero. But
other people's terrorists.
No person's freedom. All right, cool. That's actually very similar to my hot take, actually. So, we talked a little bit earlier about the idea of, like, there's going to be another James Bond, right? And at some point there'll be another new actor in the role and everything. And I think that with whoever the next role is, I think they should make it that both 007 and James Bond are actually the title. And that whoever gets selected, the next James Bond, what would be interesting to me is two things about whoever that next character is. That one, from the beginning, that character is not Daniel Craig's James Bond. Although he's called James Bond because that is what 007 is. And that allows the idea of James Bond, ironically, like you said with Batman, to be something that is transferred as a mantle to other people. So the 007 connects with the title of James Bond. So it can move that way, right? So it can move that way. Now, it still needs to be a guy because it's James Bond. It's gonna move that way. But the other thing is that, the Skyfall kind of tapped into this, but not quite. I would take it one step further. In Skyfall, you find out, James Bond is resistant to authority, probably a substance abuser, there's all these problems. The one they should add to it is that he also has suicidal tendencies. Because I think if you add that to it, then it explains why he's willing to risk it, why he's so reckless, why he risks his life. And ironically, and it's funny because we never even talked about this, it would actually connect into the idea of how Batman is searching for the perfect death, which is why he's out there doing all the crazy stuff he's doing, because he's looking for that perfect death that would honor him. The next character of James Bond could have that same thing in him. Become like why we picked these guys to be this, because on top of all these other things, like you said, they're willing to kill people, they're willing to lie to people, but they also have this suicidal tendencies that makes them more eligible to take these risks and ride motorcycles on, little thin parts of concrete and fight people on top of trains and do all these things because they're also searching to get killed themselves.
Not chaotic enough to take anybody with them on some suicide bomb.
Exactly. Yeah, people with suicidal ideations. Yeah, it's amazing because we never talked about it, but our joints went right along with each other.
Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah, that's that. That's that. So yeah, so that's our breakdown on Skyfall. Once again, it's on Netflix for about 13 more hours before it's gonna move over to Amazon. Once again, Sticky Floors Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify Podcasts. We are on we're on YouTube, but we want you to like, subscribe, and share. We're also on Threads, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, and we're back next week where we'll be talking about Swordfish. So come check that one out. That'll be a good discussion too. See you next week. Peace.